You're now listening to the Supply Chain Secrets Podcast, the ultimate insider's guide for all things ocean shipping. Presented by NYSHEX.
We are really excited to be doing a live recap of TPM Day 1. This is the Supply Chain Secrets Podcast. We make episodes every week, Lars and I. But we wanted to do a little special event here at TPM. Show of hands, is this anyone's first TPM in the crowd? Okay, me too. Thumbs up, thumbs down. How do we feel about it? Thumbs up. Cool. How many have been coming to this conference for over 10 years? Okay, what about 5 years? 5 years? All right, cool. Well, it's my first TPM, so I have a little bit of a different perspective. Lars, you're a seasoned professional here. Keynote speaker, kind of stuff. But tell me a little bit about what you've been seeing so far at TPM Day 1.
Whoa, hold on a minute. Just hold the phone a minute. So Lars, I saw this happening. I had to just intervene. You stole my podcast. You stole my friend. I'm feeling a little weird about it. Can we talk this out?
It's a shipping. You're still coming from
Well, that's true. It's a finite universe of freight. Now, happy to be here. Happy to be sitting here with the two of you and talking about TPM. Excited to be here out here in LA.
So Lars, what have you seen Day 1?
I have seen beautiful weather, lots of people, the largest TPM ever. So not that it's an advertisement for TPM, but it just grows larger every single year. Before we delve into the content, this is my 13th TPM. And I would say, no, this is probably not the first year. I would say the same thing about last year. This truly feels now like it's a global conference. It is freight globally. What used to be mainly U.S. and especially Pacific focus is no longer just U.S. and Pacific focus. And that's not quite an answer to the question, but it got us kicked off.
It's setting the stage, definitely. What about you, Don?
Yeah, I could second that. I'm now the Senior Vice President of Commercial at Zim. And for our meetings, we have all of our trades represented, Latin America, North Atlantic, and TP. So I can certainly vouch for the fact that it's become a lot bigger as a place to talk about the market, what's happening. And, the fun part is that there's a lot of things happening in the market, so there's plenty to talk about.
No shortage of current events, I would say. So Lars, what talks did you have a chance to get to today?
And with a lot of meetings, I only had a chance to go to two main talks. I went to the early in the morning and then went to some talk session looking at the market from an NYSE perspective. And I happen to agree quite a lot of what John was outlining in terms of where the world is going. I think that's also reflected in my millions of postings over the last year. And I think Sun actually did a pretty good job also at something slightly different. Because when I look at, I was about to say, every single conversation I had in this conference so far revolved around the same topic, unpredictability. A whole new level of unpredictability and uncertainty in terms of where this is going. But the thing I liked that Sun didn't got a question also down the line of how on earth are we going to deal with this? Where very calmly he was saying, well, we have unpredictability and changes in liner shipping for the last 30, 40 years, which is absolutely true. And every single time a new curveball is thrown in this industry, trade finds a way. I mean, from my perspective, let's just think back to the pandemic. I mean, who would have believed immediately prior to the pandemic if somebody told you the entire world is going to shut down, people would be forced to work from home, and some of the ports are going to be closed for months out in China. And the question will be, oh my God, how are we going to deal with that? The answer is we did. This is an extremely flexible industry in terms of adapting to circumstances. And during the height of the worst of the pandemic disruptions, this industry moved more containers than ever before in history. Granted, it was a lot more expensive for shippers than it used to be. Granted, it was took a lot longer. There were a lot more delays, and trade still moved. So we could certainly talk at length about all the horrors that seems to be lying ahead of us in 2025. But one thing I'm actually also fairly certain of, trades will find a way, no matter how many curveballs are thrown at it.
Very uplifting message. I think as supply chain professionals, we may not give ourselves the credit that we earn and deserve for all the work and flexibility that we build into our work here. But I second what you're saying about the unpredictability, but I think there's also an element of managing risk, having contingency plans and figuring out what the best route forward is when you don't know what's going to happen in the future. Don, I'm sure you've been in a lot of meetings with shippers and NVOs. Do you have a different perspective on what's kind of being talked about in these meetings?
Well, I think I have a little bit of a different perspective than Lars because I didn't make any of the sessions. And one of them was my boss, Nissim. So sorry about that, Nissim. I wanted to go, but I've had about 14 meetings already today. From a customer standpoint, I think, it's just getting an indication of what the next year looks like. I think it's a very interesting time in the industry. You have some companies which filed for bankruptcy, which has an impact on the carriers, probably makes us a little bit more sensitive about credit than we used to be. A lot of questions about the Red Sea. When are we going to return? And I would say not soon is the most specific answer I can give. Because I would guess it's more towards latter half of the year, maybe into next year. And what's going to happen in Ukraine, I think that's going to have a big impact on capacity. I think carriers are going to look to deploy more into North Europe because I think what's happening with Russia has limited them a bit, and that will probably change. And for a carrier, I know everyone's going to break out their tissues right now, but we're worried about the cost headwind. We just finished an ILA agreement, which had a material impact. Our president talks about a lot of different things, including ships made in China, the impact there, your Chinese carrier, et cetera. And, we have our friends at, Drury and Alphaliner that are posting what the cost could be. But to me, that's just bad. Like, that's what the picture looks like today. I think there's going to be network changes. There's implications that we haven't quite thought of. But to Lars' point, we're a flexible industry, we'll find a way. But does that mean it's going to be really expensive like COVID? Does that mean, it's going to be very punitive to the carriers? Hard to tell right now.
Interesting insight. At this point, I wanted to ask if anyone in the audience has a question. You don't need to be shy.
And maybe while people are wondering what questions to ask, if we should follow up on what Don was saying, we're faced with the uncertainty over the area side. I've had especially a lot of different meetings with shippers here, basically every single Saturday. And again, one of the recurrent themes is obviously a lot of shippers are here to also kick off or continue contract negotiations. And their key concern is, how do you negotiate a contract when it is so unpredictable what is going to happen? There are almost equally likely scenarios that freight rates are going to be strong over peak season because we continue to go around Africa and there's strong demand. To scenarios where it opens up and the U.S. gets a recession and the whole market crashes and everything in between. How do you go about that? And one of the things I think is important to realize is, no matter whether you are a shipper or a carrier in these negotiations, your counterpart is facing the same uncertainty. It's not like you sit as a shipper and yes, there are many scenarios and the carrier has the answers and vice versa. So I think one of the important elements for contract negotiation this year is to come to also an agreement between both shipper and carrier how to deal with some of these scenarios if they actually unfold. How to deal with a scenario where I would assume a lot of contracts take as a baseline, we continue to go around Africa. How do you then deal in the contracts if and when the Red Sea will open? That's a valid discussion. And how do we deal with if, for example, this new item 301 comes into effect, which of course would drastically change all the setup, to deal with that in the contracts. Not that there should be specific rate levels, but an acknowledgement that there are some really large scenarios that will change the foundation for the contracts. We agree up front on a method for discussing then what happens.
Yeah, I mean, if I could comment, I think, from my perspective where I sit, again, I'm terrible at predicting the future, and I don't know if I would take this as a prediction or not. But I do think we do see more rate volatility since COVID than we had in any other time in history. I remember when we were celebrating a $500 rate increase, they were like, wow, that's amazing. $500, I'm so happy. And now we can see, the spot rate go from 3,000 to 8,000 in a very short period of time. So I think you have to think about, how much do you want to do on a fixed deal? How much do you want to expose yourself to spot? And, I think part of the dilemma for a shipper is that they feel like they're making a bet. I'm putting all my chips on black. I'm putting it all on red. And we don't want it to feel that way. We were looking for solutions that say, like, look, we're not going to outsmart the market. I don't have customers saying, you know what, I agreed to a rate at $4,000 and the rate was actually $3,000. It doesn't happen. So it's a question of like, how do you flatten these things out? Because what we do on the carrier side is honor our commitments. That's super important for us. But if it's a fixed deal for this much space, that's how much you're going to get. The rest is going to be spot, whether that's up or down. Hard to say.
Yeah, I think a lot of shippers are also thinking about the mix of, what allocation do I want to book towards NVO versus book directly with the carrier, and thinking about the spot versus long-term committed contracts. But Lars, you were kind of implying that there are different actions that you can take to help establish a contract that safeguards you a little bit. There are certain mechanisms that you might be able to employ into your contract. Can you talk maybe a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think safeguarding might be a strong word to use. I think it's more a matter of, especially many on the shipper side, to find out what is most important. Is it most important that you have a contract where you can tell your CFO that this is the exact rate that we have? Or is it most important that you have a contract where you have a reasonably large assurance that no matter what happens in the market, you at least have the capacity allocation that you need in your supply chain? Because in uncertainty right now, it's not sure you can get both at the same time.
Yes.
Anything to add there, Don?
Well, I started to think about this whole idea of like, how do I mitigate risk? And I think it's difficult. I think what you probably have to do if I'm a shipper, again, I work for an ocean carrier, so I was thinking like, we're trying to figure out how to make money, which is not really true. Historically, we're not good at that. But you probably want to partition some of your business into different, what I would call categories. Maybe you want to think about multi-year fixed. Maybe you want to think about shorter term fixed, and then you want to do floating, because that sets you up for success. Now, again, you might be unhappy because you feel like you're on the wrong side of the fence, but it's a question of, are there different levers that can move? There's a lot of talk about index-based contracts. Again, I think we still have work to do on that. There's still a lot of innovation there, but that could help because, again, we're happy at the rate we are very rarely able to outsmart the market, but it's supply and demand driven. And if there's different instruments there, then certainly use those. But I think it's have a diversified strategy, build relationships with your carriers so you can at least, are you going to change the fact that something changes? We change our rotations because we can't call the U.S. because it's too expensive? No. But would you know about that earlier before it happens? Yes. And does that give you a chance to plan? Yes. So I think, building relationships with your partners is super important as well.
Thank you for that. I'm curious, a show of hands from the audience, are you all familiar with index-linked contracts, how it would work? Is it worth explaining it a little bit? Some hands? Some? Okay. Don, do you want to talk a little bit to it, or Lars?
Well, maybe Lars, you would talk about it first, and then maybe I'll.
The index-linked contracts, it's a concept that's been around for quite a number of years, but the devil is always in the detail. How do you actually do it? And there are a number of questions to ask yourself. First of all, what type of index? What exactly does the index measure? Does it measure the spot rates? Does it measure contract rates? Does it measure something that is relevant to your specific cargo on your specific corridor? That's always the first question. The next question to ask is this an index that is equally trusted by both the shipper and the carrier? Because if it's only trusted by one party, rest assured the other party is not really likely to engage into an index-linked contract to start with. And the third element, and I think that became clear, especially during the downturn from the COVID highs, because at the peak of COVID, there were also beginning to see a number of index-linked contracts for various indices. And on the surface, it looks great. If the market rate changes, your contract rate is adjusted. But quite a few of those were deals where it was changed maybe every 6 or 12 months, which sounds good on paper. But what happens if 1 month into that contract, the market rate drops $5,000? Then sure, you have an index-linked mechanism, but you're only going to see the effect of that a year further down the road. It's not quite working practice either. And you say some of the emerging concepts are more linked around. There might not be a fixed period where things are changed. It's more a matter of saying, as long as the rate stays within a certain band, your rate stays fixed. If the rate changes dramatically, either up or down, then that is the trigger point. So that way, the intention would then be to create a contract where you would be assured of your capacity allocation. For of course, what you cannot be certain of, what is the exact rate through the entire contract duration? So what's the risk profile you as a shipper actually want to take?
Yeah, I mean, I think for index-based contracts, I'm just going to talk historically for a second. I think historically that carriers like having an index-based contract because to that point of like when the rate gets updated, you always saw a lag between where the market rate was and where your current rate was. And that lag was hard for either party to deal with. So, one or the other person didn't like it. So I think it's picking the right mechanism, very important. And I mean, first of all, just say disclaimer, we're not carrying any index-based contracts. Happy to do it. If you have a good mousetrap, happy to talk about it. But again, not sure how to do it. But if you did it with a shorter duration, if you updated like monthly, then you kind of take some of that sting of you have this lag between what's actually happening and when you update the rate. And I think that if you have different durations, shorter durations, that could work because then that's more reflective of the market because you kind of have that behavior anyway. Carriers say, okay, April 1st, here's $1,000 GRI, work it down, work it down, work it down. Okay, here's April 15th GRI, work it down, work it down. So you have these rates that are going up or down. Some take, some don't. Even after GRI, rates go down. So it's happening anyway, but it's just like that trusted mechanism that you can have. I think there's a way to do it. Not entirely sure how to do it.
Oh, yeah, you say that it's not really rocket science, but the reality is also it's not either or. It's not either you put 100% of your volume on index-linked contract, or you don't use. I mean, it's perfectly fine. I got this 50% of my cargo that's absolutely critical and vital. I want to safeguard that one. And then that goes on an index-linked contract. And the other ones, I'm perfectly happy to play the spot market or play with the NVOs or whatever. It's not either or. It depends on what portion of the shipper's cargo is relevant for an index-linked contract.
Great points. And here at NYSHEX, we've been developing a freight index. So actually on April 30th, we're launching the beta version of the index. So we're having a big day. We're at the New York Stock Exchange. If you're curious in joining the event, definitely let us know.
Thanks for listening to Supply Chain Secrets Podcast, presented by NYSHEX. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Want to be a part of the show? Register to attend a live recording at the link below.